Director.
Good morning. Welcome to the June 19th, 2018 Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting. Supervisor Tofinelli, who's our chair, is running a few minutes late, so I'll kick this off. We'll head into closed session. Madam Clerk.
Item 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, we'll move into closed session.
Good morning. And welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for June 19, 2018. Will you please rise if you can for the pledge? Supervisor Mills, will you please lead us?
Let us begin. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk.
Report of closed session. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action taken.
Madam Clerk, announcements?
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Are there any board announcements? No? Staff? Any staff announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, public comment.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Good morning, Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. I had the pleasure of spending the night in West Point last night, and this morning I'm taking the long way home. I slept with the windows open, with no fear of criminal action, no smell of marijuana in there. It was very pleasant, actually. I'm not against marijuana. You guys just did it wrong last time around. Anyway, I'll be heading down the road, your roads, which are rather good roads. You know, in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, people don't realize that you can take a city like Oakland and you can go down near the airport and you can find communities where there's still gravel roads. You would think that there'd be, yes, pay attention to me, Jack.
I'm sorry, I thought there was a little kid that I knew walking back up Carl.
Oh, little kid, okay.
Sure, apologies.
Can I get some time back here? Thank you. Okay, okay. Any questions before so I get more time? Okay. No. Megan, pay attention here. Why not? Let's do it. And people don't realize how good they have it up here. The roads are actually well maintained. You get service, rapid service when there is a problem. So don't take it for granted. I understand that you live in a good place. Don't ruin that place. Don't bring in. Be very, very cautious of how you regulate anything that you may bring, that you may want to regulate, because it can turn bad. It can turn bad really quick, and it can turn bad in several ways. It can turn bad in how people view the place that they live, and it can turn bad in how they in how they're affected. So be very, very cautious of that. I have to, down in Burson, I'm going to go pick up a check, and then I'm going to head on down the road, and I have a list of things I have to do. You don't have a Baskin-Robbins in Calaveras County, and I have to pick up something called, was it Mousse Royale, chocolate mousse royale ice cream. And I don't think you have a really good florist, and I have to go to the florist because I like to design my own bouquets when I give them. It's very, I'm very detailed about those things. You're going to grow as a county, and hopefully you'll have these services, and hopefully you will mature in such a way that quality of life is emphasized. You don't have a 7-Eleven, by the way, either, and many a night I find myself at midnight and at a 7-Eleven after a night out. I still have a little time because of Jack, but I'm not gonna take it. And I'm gonna thank you very much for today. And I have a 10 o'clock, so I'm gonna wander around a little bit and take care of that. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Hi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and board. My name is Danielle Maxwell. I am from Avery. Randomly, not randomly, this is kind of, I think, something that's going on. I went to apply for a job because it's becoming a 2-income county. Our rents here are raised. There's not much rent, so forth. I'd like to make a little bit of extra cash on the side so I could pay for a little bit of more gas and milk and bread and butter, so forth. So I go to apply for this job, and I'm thinking, well, my situation, you guys know it already. My son's special needs, so daycare's pretty hard, respite's hard, and I'm left to my devices, and I do pretty good. And you, as a board members, have helped me in my quality of life, and thank you for that, for each thing that I've brought to this board. On a general basis, I was speaking with Bret Hart School, a couple of other parents, Family Resource Network, Valley Mountain Regional Center up here, Rhonda Trout, and I'm looking into like a boys and girls club or like a YMCA or like an after school program thing for just like typical developing children, and there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. And I think, and I know that I'm not the only one that thinks this, but if we had a facility, the demand's there. We have latchkey kids going home. We have two parents that are going to work now. The rents here are becoming valley priced, and we need to supplement our incomes, and our kids are being sent home, and this county really needs an after-school program for children of all ages, all colors, all creed, all income. We don't have that here in this county. We have nothing. Park and Recs has something here and there, but we do not have a facility that provides the social interaction, which would probably keep our kids out of a lot of trouble and out of the system when they're 18. So whether it's an academic thing or a Boys and Girls Club thing, there's nothing that this county provides for our children. And I think with the demand coming up on a social and economical level, that this county would, it would be an asset to this county, and an asset to our families and to our kids. So I'd like to pull together a couple of agencies and facilities and parents and this board to get involved on finding a facility. And staff is there and ready. I've talked to some school people. There's people that are qualified to do this job. So maybe this is the first step, and just get the ball going and awareness, and get something for our kids in this community, in this county. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend, last weekend. Happy Father's Day.
Good morning. Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Today I've come to you to voice my objection to the suppression of public participation in these meetings, the limiting of public comment, public input, public discourse, criticism, and protest. Began several years ago when this board decided to limit your meetings to twice a month. It was followed with limiting a half hour for public comment, and then pretty soon it was only 3 minutes per person. Now I find we can't bring our posters and our signs in to let the TV viewing public see what we're talking about. Might as well just lock the doors and keep everyone out if you can. I hope it's not because you're afraid of being criticized and exposed for what you do and what you don't do, but it's a great disappointment. And speaking of great disappointment, I want to tell you about a cartoon I saw recently. It had Kim Jong-un on one side, the murderous barbarian, and it had Donald Trump on the other side, the lying hypocrite, racist bigot, sexist misogynist, and the adulterous whoremonger, both facing each other, shaking hands and smiling. They both had a thought cloud above their head that said the same thing. Oh my God, who does your hair? I thought it was great, but it reminds me that they are two peas in a pod. They're both greedy, heartless egomaniacs with no compassion, sensitivity, concern, or empathy for anyone but themselves. Every time I see a picture of our president, I'm going to think of, oh my God, who does your hair? Thank you.
Good morning. Katinka McEwen, District 2, business owner, fire victim, county corruption victim, and mother of two. Why did the urgency ordinance quote-unquote fail? Was it because the regulated farmers paid the county $16.7 million in taxes and fees? Certainly not. This money has balanced last year's budget and left a few million to spend on this year's budget. Was it because the regulated farmers chose to cooperate with the Ag Department in implementing integrated pest management practices and reporting of pesticides from a pre-approved list? No, that can't be it. Was it because of collusion that the sheriff's office was directed to hold back the results of background checks for nearly a year in order to delay inspections? Possibly. Could it be blamed on the slanderous dissemination of false and misleading claims after the EIR comment period made by you, Dennis, on your iPad? That regulated farmers were responsible for the environmental degradation that was being perpetrated by the illegal growers? This was actually the reason regulation was called for in the first place. Was it because this scheme would allow you to Was it because this scheme would allow your marionette Clyde to condemn county staff as dysfunctional and incapable of overseeing such regulation, knowing full well there would be no rebuttal by staff for fear of being fired? You came into office claiming to have a mandate for a ban and are currently arguing this defense of your actions in court. This is how you justified removing the permanent regulation written by staff from the draft EIR. This monumental waste of time and energy was paid for with tax money from regulated growers. You deliberately manipulated the CEQA framework, knowing that it had to assume 100% compliance with the ban for analysis. This required assumption is clearly implausible. Non-compliance with prohibition is why we now have legalization and regulation in California. It is the environmentally preferred alternative to a ban. Be honest for once. Was it really because there was a concerted effort orchestrated by you, Dennis, your honcho Bill, and your puppet Clyde to prevent it from working at all once you took office? I think so. You systematically denied hundreds of applicants for minor infractions instead of arresting and prosecuting the most violent and environmentally reckless offenders that had never even participated in regulation in the first place. This was pure cowardice. The citizens of this county are not the dumb herd of sheep that your deceptive tactics calculate them to be. You can delete posts in public forums that shine the truth on your deceptive messaging all you want, but listen to me. We, the people, see through all the underhanded, quid pro quo, corrupt misdealing, and misinformation that you have perpetrated. Your deliberately poor, corrupt management of the program was a failure. Your day of reckoning will come in November. Thank you.
Trevor Whitkey, Calaveras Cannabis Alliance, District 2 resident. Last week, On Thursday, at the very end of the meeting, the board held a discussion and engaged in deliberations on an issue that was not on the agenda. This was pointed out by county staff several times, that the poll that Dennis Mills requested was veering into the terrain of deliberations. Now, out of those discussions, we found that Clyde Clapp supports sending a ballot initiative to the voters in November for an up or down vote. We also found that Michael Oliveira, Supervisor Oliveira, has stayed true to his position all along to send something to the voters. We also got, the very next day at 4:48 p.m., a Facebook post that claimed to be from Supervisor Mills. And Supervisor Mills goes on to elaborate the reasons why he brought up the poll, why he supports sending the issue to the voters. And towards the end of it, he says, "For all of these reasons, it is important to permanently end the debate with a vote by the people. Yesterday, I polled the board about placing our existing ban ordinance on the November ballot for ratification by our county voters. They agreed 4-1 to instruct staff to bring forth an agenda item aimed at placing the issue directly before the public. I believe that public wants to end the commercial cultivation of marijuana and retain our wonderful rural lifestyle. This is not about denying people to consume marijuana, but about whether it is in the best interest of our county and its residents to become a pot-growing center." He then goes on to say, "In making our original decision to ban commercial cultivation, we involved expert scientists from many universities, respected organizations, to provide critical details to support that decision as policymakers." He also, at the very end, says, "Let's allow voters to ratify the decision made by their elected officials. This is a critical issue that requires honest facts and analysis, not continued disinformation, special interest. The will of the public is critical. The future of the quality life of our children and our children's children is at stake, and this is why I have taken this action." This is a Brown Act violation. We now know we have collective concurrence between 3 supervisors. Supervisor Oliveira said that he intended to send something to the voters. Supervisor Clapp said that he intended to send something to the voters. Supervisor Mills has since released a public statement that has been disseminated on Facebook. He also gave an interview to Clark Broadcasting, and an article was published in mymotherlode.com expressing his views. This follows a pattern of behavior in which Supervisor Mills has completely disregarded the rules and procedures vis-a-vis public meetings laws. There's already a pending litigation on this issue. This needs to stop.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Megan Gonzalez, Rolling Hills Bookkeeping, San Andres. So I caught the last 15 minutes of your most recent meeting. Mr. Mills really liked to throw curveballs in the 9th inning, don't you? First we get the silent poison dropped on us at the last minute, kind of out of thin air, off agenda. And now you want to hear from the voters after 18 months of wishy-washy political games. And Mr. Clapp, you stated in January that you would not make any other vote to bring this issue up and waste more of county staff time. And now, after you successfully shut down hundreds of legal businesses, now you care what the voters think. It's pretty amusing, the timing on this, considering it was right after the primary and right after the signatures were submitted for the recall of Mr. Mills. Your motives here could not be more transparent. You're scared. You're finally getting an idea of what it means to reap what you sow. Good. Because maybe that little smidge of fear you're feeling will give you an idea as to what some of the farmers you banned and the businesses they depend on are currently going through. The fear of, am I going to be able to support my family? Mr. Toffanelli, Mills, and Clapp, I wanted to give you an idea of what life is currently like for me at Rolling Hills Bookkeeping. Every day, every single day, I get a call or a visit from a local farmer, client or not, panicking because they don't know what to do. They can't pay their bills. They have legally grown product that they can't sell. And I remind you, you voted to continue that urgency ordinance. And now they can't sell the product that they grew under it. They can't find work in this county. There are no jobs. Have you looked around San Andreas lately? There are more spaces for lease than there are actual businesses. These weren't big corporations that you shut down. They were small farmers with kids, with families. Mr. Mills, instead of inspecting cars and repaving roads, I encourage you to go around to the businesses in this county and ask them, hey, how's your bottom line doing so far this year? Because I guarantee you, the majority of them will tell you it's exponentially down. I know mine is. We are currently grossing $96,000 less than we were 6 months ago. That's 2 of my staff members gone. I can't pay them now because of the vote of you 3. You pushed us all into this mess, and it's not right. It's not right that the bias of a few was able to determine the livelihood of hundreds. So where are we now? 5 months into this, trying to balance a budget with a $9.2 million deficit? Hundreds of farms shut down, thousands of jobs lost. This will be your legacy. This is what you will be remembered for, the 3 men who tried to turn Calaveras County into a ghost town. So once again, really looking forward to November, because the voters of this county are seeing right through you. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Michael Falvey, District 2. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not in the cannabis industry. I'm sympathetic to all arguments in this issue, but after seeing what's going on for the last 2 years, and then to read what happened at the end of last week's, or 2 weeks ago's meeting, or last week, I guess, it blows my mind. The stance that was taken by this board, pivoting on it 180 degrees by members of this board, an obvious political move, is beyond comprehension. And, you know, why don't you guys get something done for the good of this county instead of just running in place in 4 foot of mud? You know, please, I mean, it's from myself, I'm getting to the point, I'm begging you guys to do the right thing for the good of this county, not for your own personal agendas. Thank you.
This email is from your honcho, Bill. Calaveras, and distributed to all the supervisors. The Calaveras Board of Supervisors proudly presents the people of Calaveras County versus Big Pot. This match will take place on February 13th at the Board of Supervisors Arena, San Andreas, California at 9 a.m. There will be no reserve seating. In the People's Corner, wearing white trunks and red and white and blue striping, will be the People's Champion. Working the corner positions will be Gary Iron Man Tofinelli, Dennis the Architect Mills, and Clyde Mr. Reliable Clapp. In the Big Pot Corner, wearing droopy green trunks and sponsored by Cheech and Chong, will be seconds to include Jack Banana Peel Garamendi and Mike Is It Time to Vote or Take Public Comments Oliveira. Disgusting. In a rematch of the February 12th Board of Supervisors meeting, Big Pot will be seeking a second bite of the apple to overturn the majority decision of the Board of Supervisors to ban all commercial cultivation of pot. The pot cartels are relying on their lapdog supervisors, Garamendi and Oliveira, to get another confusing set of advisory votes on continuing the failed regulation of commercial pot cultivation in our county on the June ballot. It is time for the citizens of Calaveras County to finally drive a stake through the heart of an industry that is terrorizing and destroying our county. Please be at this event and voice your opinions. Such bigotry and hypocrisy. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Any other public comments?
Good morning, George Fry. It's absolutely astounding to me how you 3 stooges can consider yourself doing the right thing. You don't care about anybody but your own arrogant egos. And that's the long and the short of it. I just don't get it. what's going on here is a microcosm of what's going on in Washington, D.C. So you guys must be really, really proud of yourselves. I just don't get it. You guys have offended, and obviously, Mr. Mills, you don't have as many people out there as you think you do supporting you. When we went out and got 2,200 signatures. So that says a lot. And Mr. Clapp, I don't think you're going to make it beyond November 6th. And Gary, you're in for a rude awakening. I am so very disappointed in you. You just absolutely boggle my mind. You are the poorest person to have the leadership of this board, without a doubt. I have never seen anything like this in my little over 20 years of coming to board meetings to see people in action. This, without a doubt, minus Jack and Michael, is the worst board I have seen in over 20 years. You need to redeem yourself and get on with the business at hand. Are we going to go 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more years without doing anything about the general plan? Maybe. You guys always find something else to do instead of the things that need to be done. I just can't believe it.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, I will close public comments and we'll move on to the regular agenda.
Chair, could we take a break for just a moment? My laptop is having trouble.
5-minute break?
Please.
Okay. We will take a 5-minute break. All right, we're back in session. Madam Clerk, item number 2 on our agenda.
Item number 2 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commissioner's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial medical cannabis registration 2016-105 for Sangchan Sprayberry on APN 036028003.
The appellant is here, present.
Good morning,
Good
Your
morning.
Honor.
You'll have to wait.
Oh,
Okay.
I see.
All right. Okay, I'll let you know. It's fine. Okay, I will open this hearing, and I will read the procedure for the hearing. Staff will give a presentation, and if board has any questions of staff, they'll ask. Then there'll be a presentation by the appellant, presentation by members or comments from members of the public. That should be limited to 5 minutes per person. Then there'll be a summation and a rebuttal by the appellant. That's for 15 minutes. Staff summation and rebuttal. A rebuttal by member of the public. Then board questions. I will close the appeal hearing, and the board will have a discussion and deliberations. So this hearing is open, and staff, Mr. Maurer, Miguel, it's up to you.
This is Miguel Contreras with the Planning Department. I'm here to present Appeal 2016-015 for Sangchan Sprayberry. Ms. Sprayberry was denied under 17.95.17.8.2 of the urgency ordinance for violations of local law. The local law that was violated would be 0.3 or 3.56.040 of the Calaveras County Code, which is the Measure C tax. Ms. Sprayberry failed to pay her Measure C tax when it was due by the tax collector. That's basically it for the presentation.
Any board questions? No? Seeing none? Yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, Miguel. So the registration was all complete. The one violation is they did not pay the tax.
I wouldn't say that the registration was all complete. It was still under validated,
Okay.
still pending approval. But one of the things that you have to do to get fully approved is pay the tax taxes.
But it was still pending at the time, so.
Yeah, there was a deadline to pay, and Ms. Sprayberry did not pay by the deadline.
All right, the appellant.
Good morning, Your Honor. Yes, I do not have the money to pay that tax by the due time because doing the canopy is really hard, and this year all the price going down, nobody buy anything hardly. So it's hard to make money to pay the tax too, plus take care of myself, my bill, everything. We are working very hard, and I cannot come up with the money on time. I'm sorry, and I know it against the law, all those excuse me. But I went to see Barbara, and I don't see her, but I don't meet her, but I talked to the other lady. I say, hopefully I will either way sell my property or do something, to pay the tax. Because I don't produce anything hardly, Like I said, the price go down, and I keep the crop, then it's no good and turn yellow, and then nobody buy. So that's how I get in trouble. So hopefully this July, end of July, I will come up with something with the money to pay the tax, all of them. So that's all I can say, and I would like to ask Judge to give me some time a little, just to come up with the money on end of July. Yes, I hopefully don't add to any more 10% that is killing me. It's 22,000 and now come up with 26,000 something. What next? If I don't come up, probably 30,000, and I don't know what to do. It's no money.
Any board questions?
Did you make a payment in June of 2017?
I make first the payment 22,000 after that, and I did not make it.
Have you tried to work out payment options with the treasurer, with the tax collector?
That time I know they give some option, like I can make a payment, but I know it's too late. I come is already it's over, So I've been, no too late. So I did not come say, oh, I want to make a payment plan. But she said it's too late now, It pays the day. So that's why after that, then I come to hearing here.
Thank you.
Any other board questions? Okay. Is that all you have to say?
Yes, and
okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Public comments? Any public comments?
I attended some of the budget hearings, and did I hear that we're $9.2 million in the hole? Is that where y'all ended up? Because what I know, and I'm going to refer to this, because if we're forcing people to destroy their crops, they're unable to pay their taxes, that's going to have an impact on the budget shortfall that, if that's what I'm understanding, that there's $9.2 million promised for the next fiscal year and we don't have the money, and we're forcing people to destroy their crops before they can sell them, how are you going to get the funds to cover the deficit? And no, it's not about the budget. It's about marijuana. It's about collecting taxes on marijuana, which this woman is claiming she doesn't have the funds to cover. So you're kind of in a catch-22. If I'm trying to put it all together with no help from you people because you're not cluing me in, but I'm trying to struggle to find out why that if there is a possibility that people could be paying their taxes, but if you're cutting them off at the knees, it doesn't make sense.
Any other public comments?
Well, there's a perfect solution. Mr. Clapp knows what the solution is, and that's the money that he owed for fines and filed bankruptcy so he didn't have to pay the county.
Hi, Danielle Maxwell Avery. I don't know if there's a communication barrier or letter barrier or time barrier, but maybe the county needs to consider that. I mean, it's clear. I could see if this was my home, I would be in dire straits right now. So I would be, personally, I'm asking the county to look into this and maybe give her a little bit of time to come up and make a payment, give her the option for a payment arrangement. If that process didn't go through properly, maybe give her another chance to have the option to make payments. Whether it's pot growing or working in a restaurant or in-home support services, people in this county are struggling and at the mercy of you guys. Look into this and maybe give her an option to do the payment plan. And if she doesn't, then she doesn't. And then it's very clear. Thank you.
Any other public?
I'm not sure all of, Trevor Whitkey, CCA. I'm not sure all of the details of this case. However, if the denial happened after February 10th, or excuse me, 13th, and the sunsetting of the urgency ordinance, there is an issue with the fact that there was no urgency ordinance on the books. The urgency ordinance sunsetted on February 13th. All of the provisions contained within the urgency ordinance also sunsetted at that date. As a result, there's no basis for which the planning director can deny any registrant under the urgency ordinance because the chapters or the sections of the chapter are literally no longer existent. I looked at the municipal the county code on the website that it's available when you Google county codes, and it showed that the updated 1795, the ban ordinance, was in place essentially immediately after February 13th, and the urgency ordinance was no longer there. The chapters and provisions of the urgency ordinance were not there. I don't understand how the county is able to continue administering the urgency ordinance after the end of the program. I'm aware of the 90-day exemption that was allowed to growers to come into compliance, but nowhere in that 90-day exemption language does it say anything about affirmatively administering the program. It says that in 90 days, all permits will automatically terminate. It's actually saying in the absence of affirmative action taken by county staff, all permits terminate. That means that there's literally no basis in code for this denial if it happened after February 13th. And so that's an issue with this and every other appeal and denial that has happened after the end of the urgency ordinance. The continued administration of the program after February 13th is a very significant issue. I know in the mid-year budget, CAO Lutz indicated that they were going to continue spending money to wind down the program. It's very interesting the alacrity with which you guys have conducted inspections and denials and processed literally everybody in a couple months after having done nothing for 2 years. I think that there are some pretty clear violations of Prop 26 here and the misuse and misappropriation of funds by county government, and that we should look into this. I think county staff should have a closed session meeting with the board about the misuse of funds and the need to actually refund everybody who has paid their fees, particularly the people who paid their fees in the last couple months, because they literally paid $5,000 into a program to be administered for weeks and or days. That's a pretty significant misuse and misappropriation of our funds. Also, I think that all of these hearings are tainted by the fact that, one, Clyde Clapp has a conflict of interest. There is still a pending conflict of interest enforcement action in the FPPC. He should recuse himself from these hearings, having stated that cannabis negatively impacts his personal financial interest. And so for that reason, he should recuse himself from these hearings and not participate. And yeah, for those reasons, I think you should probably not take action to deny this applicant and simply move on from this process. Okay, bye.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll go on to summation and rebuttal. Palin, do you have any other things to say? Do you have anything else to come up and say on your behalf? You'll need to come up here, ma'am, and speak into the microphone, okay?
Yes, like gentleman said, but I know it's hard to say because, you know, I understand what I do. I'm supposed to pay the tax, and I regret that. But whatever I do, I cannot come up with the money. So I don't know how I gotta make it, but I know the rule is the rule. But if you just have mercy on me, so whatever you judge me want me to do, and I try my best to pay the tax, but like I say, I may not come with the money that fast. And if you guys say, okay, if I don't have to pay tax, that is on the last end, that will be great for me. So I know I owe a lot of money, you know, and to do the farm, and I still have bill, you know, and all those, and it's tough. And I just ask mercy of you guys, and that's all I can say, and thank you so much.
Staff.
No rebuttal on my part.
I guess I'd like to point out a couple of things. Supervisor Garamendi, you'd asked where they were in the process. There also were a site inspection had not yet been done, so we don't know about the condition of the site. There was also, we noticed that we had never received the notice of applicability on the water board. Notice of intent was filed, but we never received the final approval of that. So there were some other outstanding issues. I have to take a little offense at Mr. Whitkey's comment that nothing was done for 2 years and then suddenly we rushed through all these denials in the last couple of months. That's just simply not true, and you know that. When the urgency ordinance expired, there was the 90-day window, and I guess the other alternative of not continue to process those and ensure that those who are operating during that time were in compliance with the law, which is say you can do whatever you want to, and that's ludicrous. So in this case, there may have been some communication challenges with the registrant, but everyone who was cultivating had a responsibility to know what the rules and regulations were. We sent out several notices to all of those who did not pay the taxes by the December 15th original deadline. There were several deadlines after that. We notified others that some of the people that we did set up a payment program at the last minute because we knew there were some people who were challenged in coming up with the funds. But she did not take advantage of any of those notices. So we really had no choice but to deny this one for failure to pay the taxes. And we stand by our recommendation.
And the Planning Commission vote was 5-0?
Yes, it was.
It was?
Yes.
And the original, it says in here that the letter said, we are appealing the Measure C tax because we believe the tax to be collected illegally. Is that a copy of the letter that?
That was her original appeal letter to the Planning Commission. Subsequent to that, on her Board of Supervisors appeal letter, she did not state that, and during the Planning Commission hearings, she apologized for that, and she said that it wasn't her intent to say that the Measure C tax was collected illegally.
Yeah, because the letter provided does not say that, but your narrative did say it, so. Any, Supervisor Garamendi, your light's on?
Just a quick question, just broadly applied, but how does our payment plan application work? I mean, how have we been doing it? Just, I'm afraid I'm not.
So those who were still in arrears could apply to the treasurer tax collector. We'd set up a program where we could divide the payment into 3 equal payments, whatever was outstanding, and they were due the first of each month in March, April, and May. Knowing that the program was winding down, we didn't want to have it, run out for a long time, and the taxes were due. There was no requirement in the law that we provide a payment plan. It was due and payable, within 30 days after receipt of the tax bill, which went out in the middle of November. So it was an opportunity that the treasurer tax collector had created, working with admin, to say, well, let's see if we can help these people to some degree and get the money that is due the county.
So there was a reasonable cutoff time. I mean,
they had to have entered into the agreement before March 1st, and March 1st was the first payment was due.
So 2.5, almost 3 months after they got the bill.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills?
And, yes, and Peter, just for clarity, we're talking about a payment for product that was produced last year, not for future.
That's correct.
Future. So this is literally just bringing people into a financial compliance with Measure C as a result of what they did last year, and we're not looking at what might be hopefully grown in the future.
That's absolutely correct. The payment was for the 2017 calendar year. It was divided into 2 equal payments, one due in June and one due in December.
Okay, thank you.
She did pay the one in June, and this denial was based on failure to pay the second installment.
Which would have been the December installment.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other board questions? Is there any other last public comments? Seeing none?
Excuse me, Judge. Like I say, if give me a little time, I want to make a payment plan, maybe 5,000 each payment or something. And if I can come with money, I will try to pay off.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
All right. I'm going to close the hearing, bring it to the board for discussions, deliberations. Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
I don't see we have a whole lot of option. I certainly am a little reticent to want to set a precedent. I don't think we've ever done an approval or any of the applicants on Measure C taxes that you know of, correct?
I don't recall any. No.
So the window of opportunity actually closed sometime in March. So we're not talking about what happened in June or May or June or whatever. March was even that 90 days past the December number. So I don't see that we really have a lot of options here. The voters set the rules on Measure C, we didn't. So we have to operate by what the voters had asked us to do. And if someone is asking us to give money back under Measure C or to make additional proposals under Measure C, I think we'd have to go back to the voters to let them make that decision. So I will have to operate by what the voters have set the rules under.
Supervisor Garamendi, this is your district. Do you have any comments? I don't have any comments either. So I would look for a motion of some type.
I would have to make a motion to deny based upon what Measure C has told us to do.
Do I have a second?
I'd second that.
I have a motion and a second to uphold the Planning Commission's denial Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Sorry, ma'am. Moving on to item number 3. Madam Clerk.
Item number 3 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commissioner's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial medical cannabis registration 2016-564 for Sarah McCarthy on APN 020-027-130.
Thank you.
Is the appellant present? Is the appellant in this matter present? Seeing that they are not, I will open the hearing. And we'll have a presentation by staff.
And once more, this is Miguel Contreras with the Planning Department. I'm here to present Appeal 2016-564 for Sarah McCarthy. Ms. McCarthy was denied under the urgency ordinance for a violation of 17.95.165.9 or .n.7, which is grading beyond the May 10th, 2016 deadline.
She has no idea the judgment you guys just made.
We upheld the Planning Commission's denial. Sorry, Mayor.
That's quite all right. 17.95.165.n.7 reads, as of May 10th, 2016, all grading and earth movement on the portion of the parcel to be used for cultivation shall have been completed, other than the grading necessary for a proportional adjustment to the cultivation area to comply with the setback requirements of this chapter. A registrant seeking to conduct grading for this purpose beyond May 10th, 2016 must provide the Planning Department with a copy of a current grading permit for this proportional adjustment at the time of submitting his or her application for registration. No additional grading or earth moving for the purposes of establishing or expanding any commercial cannabis cultivation site shall be permitted after May 10th, 2016. Highlighted in red is the subject parcel. If you could pay close attention to the cultivation area that is on the north portion of this parcel. And the subject parcel is located at 6721 Quartz Mine Road. This is aerial imagery from Google Earth. It's May 31st, 2016. Note that there has been some grading that has been conducted as of May 31st, 2016. However, you can also note that there is no terraces. It just seems that the hill was scraped of grass and vegetation, but there's no terracing. County aerial from 6/9/2016, you could clearly see the terrace lines. The parcel remained like this throughout 2016. This is August 20th of 2016. Then on June or July 28th of 2017, there is a significant change to the area. All of this was evened out, landed. All these terraces that were here were no longer here. They were removed and flanned out. This is a comparison between May 31st, 2016 and July 28th, 2017. As you can see, vast amounts of grading have been conducted. Please note this tree for subsequent images. This is a site inspection conducted by Code Compliance on March 23rd, 2017. This is the extent of the grading. As you can see in the back of the parcel, you can see where the slope used to be and what it is now. Once more, if you look past the hoop houses, you can see the slope of the natural slope. These are the terraces that were on the left-hand side or on the western part of the cultivation area that you were able to see on the aerials. And this is that tree that I pointed out earlier. This is the extent of where the natural topography used to be to what it is now. This image was submitted to the by the appellant, and basically the appellant is trying to show that despite the grading, they have done a really good job in keeping the site clean, keeping the site orderly, and the appellant has acquired a grading permit subsequent to the grading after code compliance instructed them to get a grading permit. They have met every requirement of the urgency ordinance, and they were ready to be issued except for this issue. And that's it for my presentation, if you have any questions.
Miguel, sorry, Mr. Chair. Miguel, what exactly is the violation?
Grading beyond May 10th of 2016.
And the appellant is saying, what is their rebuttal? I mean, they're not here.
The appellants indicated that they did in fact grade after May 10th of 2016.
But it was all, but they went back retroactively and got all their permits and brought it to code.
Well, yeah, they moved in excess of 50 cubic yards of earth, and regardless of cannabis, they need to obtain a grading permit for the degree and volume of grading that was conducted.
Did they go back and do that?
Yeah, they did.
I mean, this is my district. I've actually been on this farm. I don't think that precludes me. I've been on a lot of farms. And this was definitely one of the cleanest operations I've seen.
Yeah, everybody concurs with that. Planning Commission concurred that this is the best site that we've ever seen. I concur with that as well. However, they did grade beyond May 10th of 2016, which is a violation of the urgency ordinance, even though they graded over an area that had been previously graded. But
they do claim that there was previous grading before?
Yeah, you could actually see it on the...
They had some grading and they did more grading.
Correct.
And so the more grading was the issue. And our ordinance is that you can only do more grading unless you are...
doing a proportional adjustment to meet the setback requirements.
Okay, were they doing that or not?
No. And even so, they had to submit a grading permit at the time of registration, and or at the very least indicated on their plot plan that that's what their intent was, but that was never done.
On this view that you have up here on the left, you're showing the tree, and you're showing that the tree is at the level of the land itself at that time, and then the other one that you showed where it was raised up, you're saying they graded that significantly amount of... Yeah,
I mean, by no means is this going to be the natural topography, you know, where there's a little island and a tree just growing on it. That's where the topography used to be.
Okay. Yeah. That's where that one piece of topography is. So we don't know what the overall landscape was before, do we?
We could...
Was that a bump or was that the top of the mountain?
It's the top rounded edge of a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on?
Yes. Miguel, can you go back to your first photograph?
Oh, photograph?
Yes, and in the, no, that was the first one. Go back.
Oh, aerial.
Yeah, the aerial,
All right.
right there. So the hoop houses down in the lower left corner, was that included in the 22,000?
Yeah, that's part of their registration. Now, there's no issue with that one.
And is all of this property been fenced off?
It's all the property what? I'm sorry.
Has all of the area been fenced off in accordance with our requirements for fencing?
It's, according to code compliance, the site inspection, yeah, it met that, the security aspect of it.
Do we know whether they did the grading themselves or whether there was a contractor that did it without permits?
I can't think of, I don't recall on the top of my head.
And the grading permit that they went to get was issued when, in March of this year? Or?
March of this year, yes.
And have the compaction tests been completed?
Everything's been completed. It's been issued.
Okay. Thank you.
And I've been, this is, I was actually really surprised to see this brought forward, as this is, you know, these are people who checked every single box. Obviously, they did not check this box when they went, but they went back and they fixed the whole thing.
Correct.
You know, I don't think these people were trying to game or do anything wrong. I mean, obviously they did something wrong, but they fixed it. This is about as clean a farm as you will ever find.
I think this is the cleanest farm I've ever seen. I've seen hundreds of them.
So I'd hate to continue this and deny these people their registration so they can't take their business to somewhere else since we've sent them away. That's a heck of a penalty to put on somebody who clearly is trying to do the right thing and has done. We've all paid our debts when we made mistakes.
Helen's not here, so County Council, there's no appellant for their case to present their case, so moving forward.
Yes, you would just go through the process and essentially skip over that. One thing that I would ask, since Supervisor Garamendi, since you had indicated that you have been to this site and that you have had communications with this appellant, this is an appeal hearing, so I would just ask that you put in the record the content of those communications so that the public and or the appellant would have an opportunity to address anything that would be in essence affecting your decision making.
I have visited this farm at the invitation of the owners. I have visited literally probably hundreds of sites and people's homes in my district. I had no idea at the time they had not been denied. I've had no conversation with them or anyone else about this appeal. So I am hearing this information all for the first time, but I do not, I think it's part of my job to talk to as many people in my district as I can, and these are my constituents.
Okay. At this time, is that satisfied? All right, this time we'll ask for a presentation by the appellant. Again, I'll ask if the appellant is here, present. No? Then we will move on to comments by the public. Public comments.
Trevor Whitkey, CCA. The same arguments I made earlier apply to this case as well. I know that this application was denied after February 13th. As a result of this, there was no urgency ordinance in place. There literally is no statute on which this denial could be made. That right there is grounds for all of you to reject the denial made by the planning director and the recommendation made by planning commission, because there's literally no authorization to do so. If you choose to do so, you're probably going to find yourself in a situation where this appellant can bring a lawsuit against the county for denying them without any legal justification to do so. Furthermore, I do know that this appellant brought in an application in January of 2017 indicating his intent to move forward with the development within the cultivation site that he had already developed. And when he provided this plan, he indicated that he intended to put greenhouses up on the spots where he put the greenhouses up. That necessarily required grading. It is implicit in the plan that he submitted on January 17th to the planning, January 2017, excuse me, that he submitted at that time to the Planning Commission. It very clearly indicated what his plans were. He was told to move forward and that what he was doing was within the purview of legality. He had an inspection and was signed off, and Thomas Watts came out onto the property, made no indication of any illegal grading, made no indication that he had done anything wrong, just simply told him that the fact that he had graded without a permit means that he needed to come into compliance. He received a letter indicating this, and literally this case is exactly the same as the Sarah Hodson case, only nobody's going to get up here and say Sarah Hodson's case was a model example of what should be done. In fact, Dennis Mills literally used Sarah Hodson's case as the basis for every claim he made in Silent Poison about registered farms. Lance's farm is not that. Lance's farm is a model farm that everybody in the county, everybody in the planning department, everybody on the planning commission said, this is a model farm. Even Karen Sisk said it, Clyde. So, everybody is in agreement that Lance's farm and this operation is a model farm. Furthermore, there's a very high probability that denying this farm incurs liability for zero reason. You already banned cannabis, guys. It's not like Guy gets to keep on operating. You're simply going to choose to get yourself sued if you deny this application. That's a bad decision. That would be fiscally irresponsible. We don't need more lawsuits. We don't need unnecessary litigation. We can move on from this situation without incurring any unnecessary undue costs. That is the best decision for you to make. If you choose not to make that decision, well, that's your choice, and you can incur the consequences of your decision. Additionally, I would like to point out, and it was something that I forgot to mention earlier, on January 31st, 2017, during the study session on the urgency update, it was stated by Megan Stedfeld, County Council, on the record that if you guys chose to adopt a ban, that you would have to return our fees to us. You chose not to. You adopted a ban, and then you chose to spend all of that remaining fee money on expediting the process of going through the pending applications and registrations, even going back over this application post facto to look at it a second time, even though everything for all intents and purposes was in compliance. And it was only when he was getting his final plan check for the grading plan that it was noticed, oh wait, oh, you did grading that we said you could do. You're denied now. Thanks for your money. Thanks for following the rules and jumping through all of our hoops. Good day, sir. That's not fair. That's not reasonable, and it's grounds for litigation. And there's no reason for you to go down that path. So I think that Chairman, Supervisor Mills, Supervisor Clapp, Supervisor Garamendi, you should all make the right decision and not expose the county to greater liability, as is your tendency.
Mike Falvey, District 2. Yeah, when Trevor brought this up, I was wondering about it myself. The Sarah Hodson case. I know the Planning Commission rejected her denial, I guess. Tell me if I'm wrong. And I assume you guys okayed her revisions. Also, okayed her permit. Am I wrong? Was her permit? Can anybody tell me?
That permit, the approval or the granting of the appeal by the Planning Commission did not come to the board. It ended with the Planning Commission.
Oh, okay, okay. So it didn't come. Okay, I stand corrected. Obviously, this one did, and boy, I'll tell you. And I've said from the beginning of this argument that we need to heavily enforce any regulations. There's nothing to enforce here, except for the issues with the grading, which apparently was illegal at the time, and the permits. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've got their permits, right? They went back, they paid their money. Again, I wish my yard looked like this. You know, you need to reward someone for their diligence. Now, and with that being said, this is pretty interesting. I do the crossword puzzle free time here at the board. This is today's crossword puzzle, San Francisco Chronicle. 47 across. Unscrupulous sales tactic. I figured it out after, going through the rest. Unscrupulous sales tactic. Bait and switch. You've gotten all these people's money. You threw the bait to them, and now you're switching. You're kicking them out. Instead of it saying unscrupulous sales tactic, it should have said Calaveras County tax revenue unscrupulous tactic. You guys bait and switched every single one of them. Go after the illegal ones. Go after the unpermitted ones. Go after the ones that are creating havoc and wreaking havoc on this county. I've heard that you've developed your list for going after grows that are now illegal and banned. I've heard you've developed it from the permitted growers list. Why don't you go after the illegal ones? They're the ones that are killing this county. If we had, you have to admit, pro-ban supervisors, if we had grows like this, there would not be an issue. So, again, I found it interesting. 47 across, bait and switch.
I admit I'm not real familiar with all the regulations and guidelines. It seems that denials are being made by setting arbitrary dates that people may or may not understand. And what I think is when you guys take action, I think you're putting the horse before the cart. You need to wait for the state guidelines, for the state policies to be put in place. And as far as bait and switch goes, I feel for these folks, all of these folks that have made investments and they're going to get the rugs pulled out from under them. And I'm wondering, like this last lady, could she have filed bankruptcy to avoid these taxes like some people do when they're hit with fines and stuff? And I'd also like to remind you, as far as grading and land modification, this county is noted for bringing water cannons and devastating hillsides and mining away hilltops and destroying stream beds and putting arsenic, lead, and mercury in on everything. You've got somebody that maybe is following the guidelines to the best of their ability because of the confusion that's been set forth. I think you need to start thinking of waivers. Now, I know you tried to set a 100-acre limit at one point. That could and should have been gone forward with waivers for people that don't have 100 acres. By the same token here, maybe waivers need to be made for people that realize that, or maybe didn't realize what the deadlines were, and I'm going to go back to money all the time. I just think you're cutting off your nose to spite your face, and I would suggest making a waiver for these folks so that they could complete what they started, but it sounds like they're not even here anymore, so I guess that's bait and switch.
Any other public comments? Seeing that, I'll close public comments and come back to Summation by the appellant. The appellant is not here, so we will go to staff summation and rebuttal.
I just wanted to touch on something that Mr. Whitkey stated, that on January of this year, the appellant showed up with a building permit, and Mr. Whitkey stated that the grading was implicit. However, that's really not the case. If somebody shows up with a building permit for these 4 hoop houses, there was no indication on the grading or on the building plan that grading was going to be involved. The appellant did not state that any grading was going to be involved, and it's not always necessary to grade to erect a PVC hoop house. The Planning Commission also found this argument to not have any merit in terms of the county implicitly allowing the appellant to grade.
Any other questions? Supervisor Garamendi?
I'm sorry, are we in discussion or still questions?
Well, questions.
I have questions. Discussion.
All right.
Board Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted the record to be clear. Mr. Whitkey had indicated that the grower of this site was a Lance, but looking through the materials, the application and the applicant is a Sarah McCarthy. So I just wanted the record to be clear that the application before the board, the applicant is a Sarah McCarthy. Unless there's something different in your records, I just wanted the record to be clear.
The applicant is Sarah McCarthy. The landowner is Owen Guyan. Owen Guyan's the one that handles most of the cannabis operation, including getting permits and submitting stuff to the county. He's the one that did the presentation for the Planning Commission hearing.
Lance?
I have no idea who Lance is. I've never heard that name.
All right, any other public comments on this issue? Seeing none. Board questions? If not, I'll close the appeal hearing and bring it back for board discussion and deliberations. Supervisor Garamendi, your light is on.
Thank you. You know, when I saw this come up, I thought to myself, I can name half a dozen other places within a mile of this that I thought what would be taken on. I didn't realize at first glance that this was that farm, because there's some people who have been bad characters up in the general area. But you know, I mean, this is a clean farm. These guys, if I remember correctly, I mean, I think he was head of the homeowners association. As a new person moving in, it is a clean farm. They seem to run things well. It seems like they step through every hoop along the way. Just because this board has chosen to ban cannabis, I don't think we ought to penalize this farm from going somewhere else for another day. I don't think they're bad characters, and so let's not be vengeful. I haven't asked us not to approve one of these things before, but I think that let's show some compassion and be reasonable here. If we were to continue cannabis, these are the kind of people, these are the kind of farms we want. So
stop.
So let's on this one, I encourage us all to let's just take a pass on this one and not deny their registration.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Just referencing what the staff had written on packet page 36 and referencing what you had talked about, Miguel. And that is that during the commission's deliberation, I explained the first sentence of 165N7 is extremely clear. There will be no further grading, and the intent was that provision was to freeze all grading activity. If you look at why did we even need the urgency ordinance in the first place? This was one of the primary reasons that the previous board had stepped into this territory, was because of the amount of grading that was going on all over the county and the effect it was having on the environment and also on the wildlife. So I look at what they said and about the Planning Commission had looked at the site plan, or that you folks had gotten the Hope House request, and you wouldn't think that having a request for hoop houses by themselves would be enough to drive an entire new activity underneath it. But that's literally what happened here. and created some additional work then required for not only the applicant but for the county to make the necessary corrections to be sure that we weren't impacting the neighborhood. But I'm also looking at whether or not there was some land conversion that occurred here, be it so minor. There still was a pushing out of into that vegetative state from the original maps that you showed. So, that's another issue that probably should be looked at. If we allow people to grade without permits and people start believing that that's okay to do, what other laws can we just simply ignore until somebody catches us at it, so to speak, if you want to go in that direction? So I'd like to know that if they're going to be good growers, that they're willing to put it all back for right now. If a future board decides or the voters decide a different direction, that's for a different day. But I would like to be sure that we stay very consistent in our approach to the urgency ordinance as it was written, and that that grading issue is one of the primary drivers to why the urgency ordinance came into existence.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on?
No, it's on.
Excuse me, Supervisor Clapp, your light is on. Okay, I have a couple comments on this issue. Can you tell me how big is the lot itself?
The lot is 15.05 acres.
And that area that's being shown right there, do we know how big that area right there is?
It's around 18,000 square feet, I believe.
And in addition to that, there is an additional hoop house lower down on the property? Mm-hmm. So the entire canopy size is?
At around 22,000 square feet. At around 22,000 square feet.
Around 22,000 square feet.
Which is what they applied for.
It's within the realms of the permitted size.
Correct.
I'm looking at the lower one, and it's within the easement distance that it's allowed on the property line?
It is. Code compliance was out there and measured it from the property line. Our aerial or our GIS service, the boundary lines are sometimes shifted. That's why it appears to be right on the line.
Okay. I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the pictures that were provided in this package here, and it appears to be a very well done farm. It seems to be well maintained, well cared for, such as Supervisor Garamendi has stated. And I see the Planning Commission voted 4-1 to deny the appeal. And the pictures you have up right there, it looks like there is now growth in the area that was graded?
Correct. The appellant went and vegetated the graded area for erosion control.
And the problem I have with what is here, though, in reality, is this picture right here just astounds me. The amount of earth that was moved. It's just astounding if you look at that tree and how far down the earth has been graded. I have no way to gauge it, but it looks to be at least 3 or 4 feet. I haven't been there, so I don't know. And to do the grading without a permit, or even acknowledge that he needed a permit until he was told, and then the May 10th, 2016. It just, in the urgency ordinance, I mean, if he did a little bit of grading, if he did some grading, but he did a tremendous amount of grading. I don't even know where that dirt went. Do you push it off the side of the hill there? Is that where it went?
Actually, I'm not entirely sure what happened to the excess dirt.
I mean, that's a more than 1 day operation, I'm sure, to get what he's got there. And what he's done. That's an issue that I have with this particular thing. I mean, you look at it, it is well done. It is a well-done farm. It looks like it's maintained white, and they care about it. You don't see canisters of pesticides or herbicides or anything laying around. It looks to be done really well, maintained really well. But the issue of the grading is a problem, and being done after the fact, after they went into register. That significant amount is an issue with me. So, and I think it was an issue at least with 4 planning commissioners that voted for it. Supervisor Garamendi?
I mean, we're creating a grave injustice by taking someone who's literally tried to tow one, made mistakes, paid for it, and we're telling them they're no longer going to be able to do business in the state of California. So they can't take this capital, the hard work, and move somewhere else. And I really, relative to a lot of stuff that's going on, I think that we'd be doing an injustice. Frankly, this whole process of hearing makes me feel pretty sick because I'm not really comfortable with what we're doing in any case. So this just makes it worse. I mean, I'll go home and take a shower at lunch.
I have a question. We haven't, when were these pictures taken? I know there's a date on here. Have we been out to the site since?
Not since, no. So these when code compliance was out there was March 23rd of last year.
And Supervisor Garamendi, when did you visit the site?
I think it was late fall last year.
So we don't know if the site looks like this today, whether he's in compliance with after the 90 days.
No, we don't know. And these pictures this picture right here was provided by the appellant before his planning commission hearing, about a week before his planning commission hearing. And he said that he'd taken it that morning to show what the cultivation area looked like. And that was back in April.
Yeah, it's too bad the appellant is not here so we can answer these questions. I understand what Supervisor Garamendi is saying. I understand. And the appellant is not here. If he's complied with the 90 days in the urgency ordinance and this stuff has all been removed, and he's attempting to put the site back somewhat to what it was prior, it would be to his benefit, because I truly understand what you're saying. But he's not here, or she's not here to answer any of these questions, and I'm not sure why they're not here. They were informed of this date and time that they were on the board's agenda?
It was publicly noted, yeah. And
have you had any contact with them up to this point between when they filed the appeal?
No, I haven't.
Do you know whether
I don't know. I assumed. No, like I said, I had no idea.
We send the appellant written notice of when the hearing is scheduled, when the notice goes out to the surrounding property owners, and we post it in the paper, so they were notified.
I'll tell you what, I would entertain a thought that we table this and try and contact the appellant. And if they can come in and show that they have taken down all of this and are attempting to conform to the 90-day urgency ordinance, and be compliant with that, then I would entertain the thought of a motion that Supervisor Garamendi would make, whether to deny or accept their appeal. without them being present to answer some of the questions that I have about the site. And I certainly understand your stance. If the other supervisors are willing to do that, we need to give him some notice and say, hey, you know, you have to now. If you don't show up next time, you're going to be denied. I mean, here's your chance. If you want to continue or go somebody else in California and continue, then you need to show up and you need to show that you are in compliance. Supervisor Mills?
Yeah, I can appreciate Supervisor Garamendi's understanding of the situation, having been there, and I appreciate the passion that you have for this. I would like to also ensure that, and that's where I had actually started that discussion, if you recall, was where are we at with the current situation? Are we cleaned up? Are we basically trying to comply with the provisions? If we are, I think that we should have an opportunity to take that into consideration, but it's new information. It would be new information to us in our decision-making process, so that's a problem. By adding that in, we'd have to push it back to the Planning Commission and have them take that additional look at it and give them an opportunity to rule.
We can certainly accept new if we choose to do so. Is that correct, without sending it back?
You have the option to, but one thing that I would ask is before we make any, before the board takes any action, if we could take a 10-minute recess.
Sure.
I just need to double check something.
Okay. We will stand 10-minute recess.
Thank you.
All right, we're back. And I had an opportunity to have a discussion with County Council during the break. And we did some reviews of the urgency ordinance itself, to which is what was before us. And
Board Chair, would you like for me to put in the record the law in which this board is interpreting?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that this board is aware that the language that we are, or that the board is currently applying and interpreting as it relates to the appeals before this board is the language of the urgency ordinance. When the applicant applied, it was the rules on the books, and so that is what is deemed to be the rules that apply during the appeal process. So the denial before you is essentially asking the board to interpret one of the sections of the urgency ordinance and whether the facts presented to you fall within or not. And so it's 17-95165 N7.
Number 7.
And so the language of N7, I wanted to read that into the record so it's fresh in your mind, and keep in mind that this is what you are interpreting. As of May 10th, 2016, all grading and earth movement in the proportion of the parcel to be used for cultivation shall have been completed other than that grading necessary for a proportional adjustment to the cultivation area to comply with the setback requirements of this chapter. A registrant seeking to conduct grading for this purpose beyond May 10, 2016 must provide the Planning Department with a copy of a current grading permit for this proportional adjustment at the time of submitting his or her application for registration. No additional grading or earth moving for the purpose of establishing or expanding any commercial cannabis cultivation site shall be permitted after May 10, 2016. So what is before this board is interpreting the language of that provision and whether the facts presented to you are in violation of this term or not. In other words, did the cultivation site or the cultivation area, was the grading beyond, was there grading beyond the specific area in which cultivation occurred? So that is what is before this board and how you interpret the language of this section as it applies to the facts presented before you.
Can we go back to the screen that had the split before and after? And it seemed to look like the grading that took place did not really expand.
It definitely did not expand. In fact, it seems that it shrunk down a little bit. If you look at the left hand, or on the left hand image, you can see the extent of where the pots go is almost up to this tree. However, on this end, the pots don't go that far, so it actually shrunk a little bit.
There's another section that had to do with what I was asking about before, and there were some questions. And that's under 1795, 1.175. And County Council, that's subparagraph A. Do you want to read that into?
Sure. 1795-175A provides that any and all registrations of medical cannabis cultivation sites pursuant to this chapter shall, without further notice, automatically terminate and be rendered invalid 90 calendar days after a permanent medical cannabis cultivation ordinance takes effect in Calaveras County, by which time all medical cannabis cultivation sites shall comply with the terms of such permanent ordinance.
So the permanent ordinance that we put in place said that they are supposed to start bringing their site back, although they have 2 years under that ordinance, and it's not part of what we're talking about. But it did say after 90 days they're starting to clear their lots back. And this ordinance says that they should comply with the terms. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier about if the registrant or the appellant can bring in to us and show us that they've started taking this down and putting it back. I do have some reservations about the grading part of it. The grading has been done within the registered site, and there's a little bit of way of determining that we have some leeway on the grading part of it. The permit was not pulled for the grading, it was pulled afterwards, is that correct?
Correct.
And it was pulled afterwards because the planning department
Code compliance notified on that.
Code compliance notified, so otherwise he would not have had a permit. So then he did go and get a permit, and it's not like he cleared a whole lot. He did do some significant grading, but he didn't expand on it. He didn't all of a sudden take a bulldozer and start, I'm going for 3 acres and going. You're right, it does look like it shrank. So I'm just a little bit dismayed that the appellant is not here to answer questions today. So I'm open to which way the board wants to go. We have some leeway here according to what's in front of us and the urgency ordinance of South that we're under. I'm open.
I would just be hesitant to do something for one individual. If we're going to sit there and say, hey, bring it back to where it was or something, it needs to be for everybody, not just for one person. It needs to be a policy we have across the board. That's just be my opinion.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Yeah, we have set a consistent approach here in denying applications for grading after the May 10th deadline with other people. So I don't want to make an exception to our current position on this. I understand that the urgency ordinance is winding down, but if we make an exception for this one, then there's others that may want to come back and be reheard again too, simply because they fall within the same boundary rules. And I'd like to hear from Peter what he would think on that.
Well, there wouldn't be an option or opportunity for someone to ask to be
reheard.
To be reheard. They have their chance for appeal. I don't know that we've had one that meets these specific facts. Most of the ones that we denied because of grading, they clearly expanded their grading, their cultivation area. But as far as the question, does it open the door for anyone that was denied based on grading. Only those that were denied, in the last 10 days, which, well, that's not happening. So unless there's another existing appeal based on a denial that occurred prior to June 7th, you're not going to hear any additional appeals based on that.
Thank you.
Board Chair. And again, I just wanted to clarify that this is about, it's not purely whether they graded or not, it's whether the grading expanded or went beyond the area in which they were cultivating. So I do believe, if the board is inclined to grant an appeal, I would recommend that the record be clear as far as the extent to which you feel that the grading that did occur either complied with this provision or did not comply with this provision.
Counsel, could you read N7 again?
As of May 10, 2016, all grading and earth movement in the portion of the parcel to be used for cultivation shall have been completed other than that grading necessary for a proportional adjustment to the cultivation area to comply with the setback requirements of this chapter. A registrant seeking to conduct grading for this purpose beyond May 10, 2016 must provide the Planning Department with a copy of a current grading permit for this proportional adjustment at the time of submitting his or her application for registration. No additional grading or earth moving for purpose of establishing or expanding any commercial cannabis cultivation site shall be permitted after May 10, 2016.
So you're saying that only proportional adjustments and no grading for establishing or expanding, not simply expanding, but establishing as well.
That is the language of the section, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this hearing to a date certain, to give the appellant and see if there's any additional information they can provide. They did testify at the Planning Commission, so I don't think that it would be inappropriate or need to be remanded back to the Planning Commission under that. So I'd like to give them the opportunity and see if we can push this back. If not, then I'd make a substitute motion to send it back to Planning Commission.
We have a second. I'll second it. Any other conversation? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 2-2. Should we call Mike?
In the past, when we have been split 2-2 on a prior appeal, I do believe that we did continue it to the next board meeting in order to have a full board to hear the appeal. So if this board is in fact split 2-2, then I would recommend that we continue this hearing to have the entire board hear it.
Chair, I will make that motion that we continue this to the next board meeting where there is a full 5-member board.
Okay.
Can I jump in quick? So normally we are hearing these types of appeals on the third Tuesday, and Supervisor Oliveira is not going to be present next month.
Do we need to?
And I don't know if there's any kind of noticing requirement.
We can.
Mr. Chair?
We can look at July's agendas and see how heavy the agendas are, and we can make an exception for this.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, I mean, they're not allowed to grow. If they're growing, that's a clear violation. So it's not, time isn't of the essence on this. I think it'd be great to do it in July, but I don't think we need to force it. I mean, what are they going to do?
Well, we'll take a look when we do agenda review. If we have a light agenda coming up, we can certainly bring it back at one of those times. If not, we'll have to go to August 3rd Tuesday.
If we continue to a date certain today, there's no requirement for renotice. If we continue it off calendar and set the date later, then we'll have to renotice it. We can do either way. It doesn't matter to us.
So we could put this to a date certain in July. If we don't have a full board, and we could bring it up and then continue it to the next date without having to go through all
Yes, that's
the
correct.
hoops again.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I have a motion by Supervisor Mills to continue this, a second by Supervisor Clapp. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait.
Just wanted to clarify for the motion just to clarify for the motion what the date certain was.
We did not set, all I said is to allow for a 5-member board to be present.
Okay, so then we would renotice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0. Moving on to item number 4. Madam Clerk.
Item 4 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial cannabis registration application 2016-528 for Odyssey Health Service Incorporated on APN 038-016-046, file 2016-528.
All right. I will open the hearing. We'll be bound by the same rules as the previous ones. Is the appellant present for this one? Again, is the appellant present? Okay, the appellant is not present at this time, so staff, you want to make your presentation?
Yes, Ben Diamond for the Planning Department. This is the appeal for SunTran on behalf of Odyssey Health Services. He submitted a application on June 28, 2016 for a 22,000 square foot outdoor grow. This application was denied for lack of valid landowner consent, a lack of lawful possession of the parcel to be registered prior to May 10, 2016, inadequate evidence of cultivation or earth movement prior to May 10, 2016, being out of compliance with the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board regulations, and grading after May 10, 2016, both to establish and expand a cultivation site, as well as failing the background check, violating other local laws, specifically failing to timely pay the second installment of Measure C, and grading without a permit. It was also denied for containing false or misleading information and making alterations to the property that would compromise the original registration. Beginning with the single piece of photographic evidence that was submitted with the application, here you can see at least 2 terraces of plants, and they are moderately well along in maturity, not quite very young, not very old either, but they've clearly been in the ground for a while, and it's difficult to make out. Somewhat difficult to make out in the bottom corner here at the date stamp, but if you zoom in, it is 5/9/20 something. It's assumed that it's 2016 as there was no previous cultivation on the property. So as of May 9th, we should see this configuration on the parcel. The grading that was done on the property, a single permit application was applied for on August 24th, 2016. The Public Works Department found the information and plan provided to be inadequate and sent a letter to the landowner on February 23rd, 2017 for revisions, and to date they have received no response and therefore no permit was issued. This is the property on April 19th, 2016. As you can see, prior to the cultivation operation that was put in it, there's no visible cultivation happening on the parcel. And here on May 31st, 2016, we can see the terraces have been installed with a significant amount of soil on the bottom terrace, but no planted out smart pots on the terraces as the submitted photo would suggest there is. Here, June 3rd, 2016, no apparent change, still just the terraces empty with soil on the bottom. And then on June 19th, 2016, the terraces finally have the smart pots on them, and there are also some smaller cultivation areas scattered about the property around the edge. And that total cultivation area comes out to be roughly 13,000 square feet. Here on August 20th, it's a little easier to see the cultivation areas on the side of the driveway. Still not much in the way of change from the previous photo, still around the same amount of square footage of canopy. However, on June 1st, 2017, we see a cleared area appear here on the property, and this total cleared area comes out to roughly 50,000 square feet. And here we see a cultivation area being installed upon it, which measured out to be roughly 11,000 square feet, which once fully planted out would put them around 24,000 square feet. And the current landowner, Aaron Nguyen, took possession of the parcel on June 24th, 2016, signed all of the application materials as the landowner, and no previous agreement with the other landowner prior to him was provided. Therefore, it was impossible for the applicant to have lawful possession of the property prior to May 10th, 2016, and couldn't have had landowner consent prior to that either. The applicant in this case is a corporation, which means anyone with a managing capacity in the corporation was required to submit to the background check, which they did. The president and the vice president of the corporation were found to have failed the background check, and no evidence was ever provided that those two individuals had been removed from it. Therefore, it was determined that the applicant corporation had failed the background check. The registrant, as of April 26th, the date of the Planning Commission hearing, had not paid the second installment of the Measure C tax, and therefore was found to be out of compliance with that local law and was further denied pursuant to that as well. The Water Board initially contacted the registrant on September 15th, 2017, instructing them that they had selected the wrong tier size based on the size of the site, and requested additional information from the appellant. And as of January 12, 2018, they had not received that information, and the NOI was terminated. During the hearing, the appellant didn't present any opposition to the grounds for denial, but did ask for a continuance to be able to be given more time to try to come into compliance, which the commission denied. And originally staff had included a ground for denial under a failure to notify us of a update in their contact information, but the commission found that there was insufficient grounds for that finding and deleted it from the resolution, but other than that, upheld the denial unanimously. With that, I take any questions.
Questions? Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Oh, my apologies.
All right, we'll move on to the presentation by the appellant, and the appellant is not here. So we'll move on to public comments. Any public comments on this one?
My crossword, I'm just kidding. I mentioned something to Gary, and if these folks could be notified by certified mail, then we would know that they're actually getting the information, and we might see them here. And I think certified mail is $7.80 to send a certified letter. Maybe they could be billed that $7.80 if they showed up. That's my suggestion for all of the people that don't show. Because there's so much money involved.
Any other public comments on this item? If not, we'll go back to the rebuttal from the appellant, and there's none here, so any other staff summations or rebuttals?
Nope.
Presenting your case?
Board Chair.
Yes.
I would just ask that staff put in the record everything that the county does do for purposes of notice, just so it's in the record, so that the record is clear that the appellant did in fact have proper notice.
Mr. Bauer.
Well, we did send them mailed notice. We did not send a certified mail, but they have a responsibility to provide us with their current address. They filed the appeal. They knew it was upcoming and would have expected to receive notice of when that appeal hearing. We typically also contact them prior to the hearing if in some cases it has taken us longer to meet the 45 days in which we were supposed to hold the hearing. In those cases, we contact them directly and ask them would they waive that time frame. So we're typically in contact with the appellant, and they are aware of when their hearing is scheduled. In this case, they were notified by mail as well as noticed in the paper.
Okay. All right. So we'll go to board questions. Any board questions on this item? If not, I'll close the hearing. We'll go to board discussion and deliberations. Any discussion, deliberations, any motions, anything? Supervisor Garamendi, this is your district.
Make a motion to uphold.
You turn on your microphone.
Make a motion to uphold this planning commission.
Do I have a second?
I would second it.
I have a motion and a second to uphold the planning commission's denial of this appeal. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you, Peter. We will take a 10-minute break in order for 5 minutes. We have a presentation coming from Cal Waste. All right, we're back. Madam Clerk, item number 5.
Item number 5 is from Integrated Waste Management to receive a presentation by California Waste Recovery Systems, LLC, Cal Waste, on their request for a service rate adjustment, conduct hearing, and direct Public Works staff to bring item back for board determination and action on June 26, 2018.
Good morning. Brian Moss, administration and representing Integrated Waste here. As stated in that announcement, this is an opportunity for Cal Waste to come and discuss with the board. It's actually an informational item as to what the next steps are with their program and with the 4.23 rate adjustment that is pending with the current contract for collection of waste throughout the county. So this only obviously affects those people who have service. This has nothing to do with people who do self-hauling and use the transfer stations and or the Rock Creek landfill. So with that said, what we did is we requested that Cal Waste come in and just speak to the board as an informational item so that everybody is aware and the public has an opportunity to see the vetting process and how this is going forward. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Cal Waste, and I'm going to be doing a PowerPoint presentation.
No, that's mine. You can do that. Yeah, I did. All right. Good morning. I'm Jack Fiore. I'm Vice President with California Waste Recovery Systems. And as Mr. Moss said, we're here today to walk you through the process of a rate adjustment. The franchise agreement, go ahead, Ray, between California Waste and Calaveras County was approved on September 13th. The agreement includes provisions that allow Cal Waste to submit a request for an annual rate adjustment, except that the initial rates that were set back in 2016 were not to be adjusted for 19 months. So this is the initial rate request. It's a 19 months have passed with the rates at their then present levels or now current levels. The rate increase is intended to compensate Cal Waste for annual increases in ongoing expenses such as labor, insurance, fuel, equipment maintenance, equipment replacement, transfer fees, processing fees, and disposal. The franchise agreement contains a refuse rate index, RRI, methodology
which is comprised of 11 different elements that may or may not change each year. Each element is measured year over year to compute a percentage change if there is one. The weighted value sum of these changes, along with an addition for the county's franchise fee, is the computation that results in the annual rate increase. For 2018-19, the increase before you that we're discussing now is 4.23%. The next 2 pages are the methodology themselves. And it's broken into 2 parts. And as I said before, there's 11 different elements. The first 4 elements are BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistic based. There's a series ID for each of them, and they measure year over year with the period ending 12/31/17, the period beginning 12/31/16. So walking through these, labor costs is the first one, and for the period ending 12/31/17, that percentage changed, according to the BLS index, was 0.98%. Now, labor is 28.5% of our overall expenses, and so the math, 0.98 times 28.5 produces a weighted change of 0.28%. So as I said, we're going to sum all of these up, but if we stopped right here and if this were the only thing that had changed, then the rate application before you today would be for the 0.28%. So that's the component of this that's for labor. Fuel is the second one. It jumped dramatically, 40.99% year over year, 12/31/16 through 12/31/17. But fuel is only 6.6% of our expenses. So consequently, although the fuel was nearly 41% and change, it only reflects a 2.69% weighted change to the overall rates. Vehicle maintenance is the third BLS category. It changed 1.97%. Vehicle maintenance represents 12.4% of the expenses, so that's a 24 hundredths of 1% change. And then the last one on this page is all other, which is the BLS bucket category. And the 2017 annual increase for that category was 3.22%. The item weight for this portion of the expenses is 22.3%. So the math carries out to 72 hundredths of 1% change. So overall on this total Part 1 BLS percentage increase or decrease, these categories represent 69.8% of the expenses, so nearly 70% of the expenses, and that mathematically reflects out to be a 3.94% rate adjustment. The second page, and I'll apologize in advance that the print's so much smaller, but this is one piece of paper that I cut in half for these two, this slide and the slide we just looked at. Items 5 and 6 have to do with handling the material once we've collected it. It's the transfer component. It's broken down into 2 parts, the industrial customer base. The industrial hauling is the roll-off transfer charges. The one on number 6 right below it is the non-industrial, which would be the residential and commercial. Those 2 expenses are unchanged for the first year because of the fact that it is the first year, so there was nothing before it to be before it. The roll-off transfer charges represent 2.91% of the total expenses, while the non-roll-off, which would be commercial and residential, represent about 10% of the expenses. And again, because there was no change, those do not have an influence to the rate. Number 7 is the materials recovery processing charges. This is the recyclables processing, and that rate went up year over year, $8.42. It is 7% of the percentage change, represents a 7% percentage change, which is factored against the 5.02% that this item has of the total weight, and that produces a 0.4% rate adjustment. Number 8 is measures disposal increases, and because again this is the initial year, we used the first year's tonnages and the second year tonnages are identical. So you can see there's a very small change of $8,335 on this one item, which will carry down below a little bit, and we'll pick that up in a minute. Item number 9 has to do with depreciation and interest. This is equipment, equipment that has to be brought on board through the course of the contract. Something changes, something else is required by the state. It could be trucks, it could be collection equipment such as carts and containers. Again, we use the same two values for this measurement because it is the initial year of the agreement. And although, well, I shouldn't say although, because there was no change, there are no dollars to that. So the year-over-year reconciled overage and shortfall for items 8 and 9 represents a 0.16 of 1% rate adjustment. Item 10 was government. This would be new government fees, and there were no new government fees imposed in 2017. So this is 0. And the last one is item 11, franchise fees. Now, the California Waste pays Calaveras County 3% franchise fees based on the revenues we collect. And so if items 1 through 10 above are going to go up, then item 11 will go up proportionately so that we remain whole and we're able to pay the county the fees owed. And the value of that is 0.13 of 1%. So on this page, you've got a total of 0.3 of 1%, and from the page prior, the two of them summed together are 4.23%. So this is, well, it is a complicated exercise. It is a very comprehensive way to address each element of the services and the programs that we provide. The next slide. Is there any question on the math? Maybe I should take a breath and ask you if you've got any questions.
You're 1/10 of, or 1/100th of 1% off. And you add the two numbers. When you take your 3.94 and you add 0.30, that would come up to 4.24.
And I'm 4.23. There's additional decimal points beyond what we're seeing here, but you're right.
So it's a rounding.
It's a rounding.
Okay.
This is a rate comparison, and we chose the same 4 counties that we used when we were here in 2016 and presented the contract and the initial rates at that time. This is the residential sheet. It shows the 35-gallon cart base rate. The $22.93 is the new rate. The old rate, I should say the present rate, is $22, so the 93 cents represents the rate increase, 93 cents per month. And then in Amador, you can see they've got ranges between $20.70 and $28.49. Tuolumne's rate is $29.37, and El Dorado County's is $22.50. Amador is in the middle of a rate adjustment hearings right now, and these numbers reflect what they are today, but it sounds as though it's likely they're going to go up in the weeks ahead. The rest of this slide shows the comparisons of services that we offer versus those counties. Alpine on the western slope, that is part of what we service, doesn't offer well, in Alpine County overall, they don't offer a cart. They're just cans and bags is the only services they offer there. The slide that follows this one is the commercial side. Again, the rates in the Calaveras County column are the ones proposed that include the rate increase. The Amador County, Tuolumne County are the current rates as we were able to ascertain them this week. The blue indicates a number that is less than the Calaveras rate, and the red indicates a number that is higher than the Calaveras rate. So looking down Amador County, for example, you can see that theirs are split. Some of the rates in Amador County are cheaper, and some of the rates are more expensive. Like the same is true in El Dorado County. Tuolumne County's rates are a little higher than Calaveras' proposed rates in all cases. And the reason you see these ranges, as opposed to in Calaveras County, we don't have a range. These counties have either, they've zoned their county so that different areas pay different amounts, or in the case of Tuolumne County, they have multiple haulers. And one hauler has this area, and a second hauler has this area, and a third hauler has that area, and their rates vary as well. So that's why you see those ranges. Last slide is there was a question of how our residential customer count looks, what has happened since we got here. California Waste was assigned the contract by the board on June 1st, 2013. At that time, we had about 4,900 residential customers. On the day of the hearing in 2016, September 13th, we had 6,541 residential customers. And today, 19 months later, or well, actually 22 months later, we've got 6,564 customers. So we've maintained our customer base throughout the time with the new contract and the new rates, and we've grown our customer base since we arrived by about a third. Questions?
More questions? No? Public comments on this issue?
My question has to do with, does Cal Waste utilize our landfill when they collect stuff? Do they take it to our dump over there in the other end of the county? And if so, I saw some recycling there, and I'm still harping about throwing away wheelchairs and appliances that can be used by the handicapped. And I'm going to address this to Brian a little bit. I noticed at the landfill there is a shed that you can put books in, donating books. Could we also have a little shed next to the book shed that you can put your wheelchairs in?
Any other public comments on this issue? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Jack, do you want to answer the question that was posed?
The answer is actually yes and no. California Waste disposes of the industrial loads that we haul. The roll-off loads do go to Rock Creek Landfill. The construction and demolition roll-off loads also go to Rock Creek Landfill. The commercial and residential waste that we collect is hauled out of county and disposed of at a landfill out of the county.
Okay. Any other board questions?
I think Bonnie was wanting to know about the wheelchairs.
Brian?
All I can say is that we'll look into that. As stated previously at the board, I think it was last week, there are specific regulations under Title 14 and Title 27 of the California Code of Regulations that says what is considered salvaging and what is not. So that's something I'd have to look into.
Okay. Can you come back sometime and give us a report?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions, Jack. First off, on your last slide there, in 2013, you did not have the sole contract for this county. Is that correct?
It was assigned to us on June 1st. We had the sole contract, yes.
So on June 1st, you bought out
yes.
Amador and
Yeah.
Okay, so that's when you bought out the total numbers at that time.
Those were the total numbers, and we bought it all at in the same transaction. That assignment took everything that they had from them to us. There was never a period of time when we each had some. There were 3 contracts, but they were all assigned at the same time.
Okay. I'm going back to your first slide where you had the numbers. It says Part 1, cost percentage increases and decreases.
Uh-huh.
This is all tied to BLS. What is BLS again?
Bureau of Labor Statistics.
So
that's
your labor costs, you're tying it to BLS, but it doesn't mean that you actually had expanded labor costs as far as giving raises out, increased workers' comp, things like that. You're just tying it to BLS in their statistics. So your costs may not have gone up.
Theoretically, I would have to say that's probably true. It is not tied to actual costs. It's tied to an index of index costs.
When it comes back to on the 26th, I'd like some information based
on that. I was going to say that that particular index is tied to the waste industry.
Yeah, and so are, well, I don't know what all other is, so maybe you can expand a little bit on that last one for all other costs, perhaps.
All other is the categories of expenses that are not labor and fuel and vehicle maintenance. So that would be general liability insurance. It would be the operating expenses of the office. It would be anything that's not part of the other eight categories. These plus 5, 6, 7, 8 on the other page.
Can you bring some information back on all other on your expanded costs for those rather than an index? So I have some hard numbers to look at. I understand using the statistics, but again, these are generated throughout the country in higher areas, like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and higher areas of cost. And so roll-off charges, we had an increase. Well, there's no increase on that one. There was an increase on non-roll-off single-stream MRF processing charges. Can you expand a little bit on what you're talking about there?
We're talking about the recyclables, both residentially and commercially, that we collect and process through our materials recovery facility in Galt. And in the last 16, 18 months, there's been quite a shift in recyclables. The international markets, they used to take a lot of the mixed paper and other fiber products and a lot of the plastic products. Those have tightened up and shut down. The expenses associated with running a MRF, with creating the 13 products that we make that will make the market, has gone up considerably. The contamination rate a year and a half ago, for even a year ago, for mixed paper and for cardboard, for example, was 5%. So your material, when you ship somebody a bale of cardboard, it had to be no less than 5%, no cleaner than 5% dirty. No, at least 95% clean, 95% pure. That 5% has changed to 0.5%, so now it's 99.5% clean. And it's a very difficult standard to reach. It's required some retrofitting on the equipment. It's required staffing up. It's required slowing the machine down and spending more time processing out those things that don't belong.
Does the banding material, the band that altogether, have to be included as recyclable, that type of recyclable?
No, but they actually weigh that. That's actually separated out. Those 7 or 8 straps on there, or there's a line on the sheet for that.
Is that right?
Yes.
Supervisor Mills, you have your light on.
Yes. Question is that you've had this contract now for 19 months. Have you been able to develop any kind of a data projection going out into the next 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years, of what your expectation would be on increased tonnages if you're going to haul? Any idea of what your thought was on cost recovery?
Well,
I'm looking more of a longer range projection than just coming back year over year over year.
Well, and I think that I think that developing those kind of costs, I think the math is the easier part of that. The developing it with some accuracy is probably more problematic because of the fact that more of the waste stream is material we don't haul than material we do haul. So while we're working to grow our customer base, we're also working to reduce the disposal and increase the recycling component of those, of the customers we have and the customers we grow into. And at the same time, and compete against the county's facilities, which take the materials for free.
Okay.
So it's pretty hard to guess that. I know there are a lot of new houses that will be developed in the next 36 months, and we certainly hope to get a percentage of those. But again, we don't service more residents than we do.
I looked at your customer counts on your last slide from 2016 to 2018. Not a real increase in customer base, and yet you go to item number 8 in your increased disposal tonnages, and there is a fairly substantial increase in tonnage, which means that same number of customers, but you are doing more hauling for those same number of customers.
No, actually, the disposal is identical. It's the dollars that change.
The dollars that change,
yeah.
Right.
So
I'm just saying there is a cost component here.
Yes.
Involving
Yes.
its same general number of customers, but you have an increased cost component.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Change in the tip fee, yeah. The disposal went up 93 cents.
Okay, and that's probably what drove it.
Yeah, that's what drove that particular one up.
Okay.
Supervisor Mills, your lights on?
Yeah, I'm still,
Supervisor.
hang on, I was still thinking, is Amador County have a landfill?
No.
Tuolumne County does not. They're hauling to Nevada. Is it Nevada?
Merced?
Merced? Oh, that's down there along with J59.
Yeah, on 59.
El Dorado County, do they have a landfill?
No, not an active landfill, no.
So literally, we're the only one that has an active landfill in our county in terms of the numbers that you're bringing forward.
Right.
Which puts us at a significant advantage in that we have the service that other counties aren't able to provide.
Correct.
Just making a point.
I do have another question. Your transfer station, Double Springs, is there a date that's going to be online?
I would hope that we'll be having the ribbon cutting this fall. The shop building is under construction as we speak. I think they're supposed to pour the slab tomorrow. The main transfer building is at the building department for permits. We have been in there about 6 weeks, so I'm hoping we'll hear something fairly soon, and that will be built fairly quickly. So we have every expectation of being operating before the end of the year, fully operational. And we are, and I should have said this first. We are operating as a transfer facility out of there already, and we've been doing that for close to a year. But in terms of the full build out,
The full build out, and this will mean that you will be no longer transferring to Galt's to separate?
we will still transferring the recyclables to Galt. That won't change, but we will be doing some construction and demolition separating there. We'll be able to receive tonnages that we can't take now under our current permit.
So you'll be separating wood, steel, concrete
Yes, sir.
at that facility?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
From our loads.
Thank you. That's all I had.
I know that Supervisor Oliver and myself toured that facility, what's about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I just kind of took a look at it here about a week ago just to see how things were looking. Very clean.
Good. Thank
very
you.
well organized, and don't see a whole lot of activity that the neighbors would need to respond to. And you're kind of out of view from Highway 12.
Yeah.
So
And
normal traffic.
we work diligently to make sure, because there's litter. There's just without a doubt going to be material blowing around, so we take a lot of care to.
And you're in a
gather it
windy
up.
zone.
Yeah.
Which means it's very easy for that litter to get out of control
Yeah.
if it's not contained.
Yeah.
So you're doing a great job of
Thank you.
keeping that facility looking good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, this was informational. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just we'll see you back on the 26th.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know about the 26th. I don't think that was scheduled for the immediate next meeting.
It was on.
Yes, that is one thing. The contract requires that action be taken by the 30th. That was one of the things in the agenda. I'm having a hard time keeping the agenda up as far as direction to staff.
I gave up on it.
Direction to staff as far as the various alternatives. This is a presentation to the board, but obviously the board has some alternatives as it relates to the rate increase. And so staff was hoping to get direction from the board so that an item can be brought back for the board to actually take action on as it relates to the rate adjustment proposed.
So you'd like to see, you said this is informational only. How, can we take action on an informational item?
It's not taking action, it's just directing.
Just a polling? You want to just
it's
do
a polling of the board to direct staff to bring a resolution back at the next board meeting for discussion and potential action at the next board meeting.
I know you're all having difficulty with your iPads. Would you like me to read you the 4 alternatives that are listed in the staff memo?
Yeah, I gave up on mine. Now it just flips back and forth.
Okay. So alternative 1 is to direct staff to present a resolution on June 26, 2018, accepting the rate increase as presented by Cal Waste. Alternative 2 is to direct staff to attempt to negotiate the rate with Cal Waste and return to the Board of Supervisors on June 26, 2018 with a resolution adopting the negotiated rate. Alternative 3 is to direct staff to present a resolution on June 26, 2018 rejecting the rate increase and instituting a surcharge on the rates that shall be effective for the remainder of the contract year to recover rate revenues lost by Cal Waste. Or alternative 4, direct staff to present a resolution on June 26, 2018, rejecting the rate increase and reducing the franchise fees or recyclable income share otherwise owed by Cal Waste.
I would propose alternate 1 at this point, if there's consensus from the board.
Supervisor Clapp?
Well, we could take the franchise tax and split it, but then Tim would give me a dirty look for taking $75,000 out of general funds, so.
He's going to give me a dirty look anyway. So your item 1?
Item 1.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Well, considering number 2 is send the staff to go see if we can negotiate a better deal. No dig on Cal Waste, but I'd hate to miss an opportunity to try to negotiate. So I would vote for number 2.
I had number 2 on my thing too, so I would prefer to at least try and do some negotiations on the part of our constituents to get.
I have a question. We made a deal last year, okay, that we would come to the board every year and, you know, go through the exercise of the RRI. It was all agreed upon, and that's how we were negotiating a year ago to adjust rates going forward. And of course, they're always going to come before the board to be reviewed, but it's going to be pretty hard to get blood out of a turnip. We're talking about 93 cents here.
I'm talking about one of the options presented to us was to direct staff to go back and see if we can negotiate.
Okay, and I don't know if that's really an option. If we've got a contract that says this is how we do it, we've performed on the last 19 months, we've done our planning according to the contract and agreed. I don't know that we're here to negotiate it so much as we are here to administer the contract.
CAO Les?
Yeah, if I could add as well, and again, I see as the alternatives that were presented to go back to the board and discuss the negotiated rate with Cal Waste, I would tend to agree with Mr. Vaccarezza in this case, where looking at the contract based on tying it to the index that we've tied it to, I don't see that there's going to be room to sit down and come back to the board with a change. Certainly staff can, attempt to do that, but I fear that we'll be back to the same exact rate that we are at here today and delay this process additionally. So if I could make a suggestion from my perspective, is we either bring back accepting this rate increase, or we go ahead and take it out of the franchise fees that gets paid back as the alternative that I think that Mr. Clapp mentioned, or Supervisor Clapp, sorry.
Well, there's been no presentation to us on what the annual costs are. What are we looking at as far as your annual take from this? Is the franchise fee enough at 93 cents a customer a month times 5,600? I don't know. They haven't.
No, this is what we negotiated, agreed to a year ago, that we came to you with a base rate, and if we're able to review that base rate and apply the refuse RRI index to each of these applications, that would eliminate the need for audited financial statements and really breaking into my books and running my business for me. So this is the rate that I can perform the services for the county at and continue to sustain my business.
Yeah, but if you want to cite the contract, okay, the contract does state that we can either give you the raise to the customers, or we can go and reduce the franchise fees, or another option that's on there. What's the other option? So that's in the contract. And so what we're stating, Dave, to you is, if we go the other route and not pass your costs on to our constituents, we don't know what the franchise fees would have to be reduced to in order to cover what you're stating here, because it's not been presented to us about what this increase is. All you say is 93 cents. To me, I don't know what compared to the 150 something thousand you had for franchise fees, is that going to cover it? Is it going to split it? Are you only recovering 75,000? I don't know.
No, my only purpose was coming up is that to go outside of the formulas that are there. If you want to go outside of the franchise fees and fund some of that adjustment through the franchise fees, yes. And I, just talking off the top of my head, there is sufficient funds to do that. The $29,000 that was paid into the recycling fund, and then there was another 5% of annual fees, which was, what's 5%? 3% of the
franchise fees were worth $150,000.
So you had $150,000 on franchise fees and $229,000 in recycling revenue that was returned back to the county. So there's in excess of $300,000 that could potentially offset some of these costs.
And see, and that's to my point, is I don't know what your increases mean to your bottom line. How much are we going to pay? I mean, there's no numbers presented here as
well, it's
to what we have to deal with other than
okay.
93 cents a month, Dave. That's all I'm saying.
So it's $6,549 a month at 93 cents a house.
And that doesn't include commercial increases, though.
Correct.
So you also have to add those into the equation, too. So that would be my question. I'm not trying to get into your pocket, run your business, or anything else. I'm trying to help my constituents on an increase. And in order for me to make that decision, whether to pass the increase on to them or absorb it here at the county level so they don't see it, I need to know some information. so we can make that decision.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I'm going after. Okay. Supervisor Mills.
Yeah, my concern is if we start dipping into the franchise fees, that's going to be general fund money at some point. You know, that benefits the county as a whole rather than just those individual customers who would receive a lower or a static rate.
Well, the
So,
recyclable goes into IWM, so it's not
yeah.
general fund.
Right. Brian, you had a point?
Well, I was just going to state what Supervisor Tocanelli said. It does go into the IWM non-general fund accounts. However, one of the things I'm looking at in IWM right now is closure, post-closure accounts. Where are we standing right now for our cell life at Rock Creek, as an example? How much is it going to cost to open another cell? How much do we have to maintain in our accounts for closure, post-closure on both the Red Hill landfill, which is closed, and for the monies we have to set aside for Rock Creek? So with that said, I don't have those numbers right now, but I'm working on that. And the IWM fund is not necessarily really flush. So I just want to be very careful with that.
Yeah, I'd like to know what those numbers are too in our next meeting, so we understand where the impact is going to be, because it's going to be from somewhere if we move it out of the franchise fee.
Right.
So
My understanding to the funds, I checked with Jeff about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and he says we have roughly $7 million set aside, and that the new cell would be anywhere from $1.4 to $4 million to open the new cell.
Okay. The books I was looking at the other day, I didn't see that, but I will confirm that one way or the other. Definitely.
Jared, do you want to possibly have them bring back both options since it's a 2-2 split, and then we can discuss it when we have a full board here?
I didn't realize number 2 wasn't an option since it was in our package.
So it was in our package, so.
I suppose to the extent that the item was, number 2 was presented to the board, it's to discuss with them and look at what was presented, because it's my understanding that this presentation was just presented or was just provided to staff, and compliance with contract terms, and see if staff concurs with what is presented, complying with contract terms. And that is what number 2 was really geared towards, was having a limited amount of time to discuss any discrepancies between what county staff believes versus what the contractor Cal Waste believes is required under the contract, and the fee increase or adjustment.
That wasn't worked out before that came to us? I mean, I'm assuming you guys have been talking about this.
Quite honestly, as I think the board is aware, my office got integrated waste a month and a half ago, with this as a pending issue that was originally under Public Works. We have, subsequent to when this was developed and put in, educated ourselves on the franchise agreement, the contract, which I would arguably certainly did paint what pictures or options we might have versus originally going into this discussion.
Good question.
So where are you at, Jack?
I don't know. I haven't made
Item
mine
1,
yet,
2,
Gary.
1, 3, or 4, I guess. your options.
Let me go back to my options. So it seems to me, Mr. Chair, that the real option is, do we eat it, or do the consumers eat it, the increase?
So what I was trying to say is, but I don't have any numbers in front of me as how much
We don't
the
know.
increase is going to mean to them. Will it offset?
If you folks would like to have staff take another look at this, or a more complete look at it, and give us all of the details as part of what we're going to discuss in the next time we look at it, fine. I see the reasoning to do that, but I think that, to the CAO's point, is that he didn't have a whole lot of time to put things together.
think if I had to choose right now, I would,
Still stay with 2?
no, of course, it's no longer there. I think I mean, we got a lot of pushback from some of the increased rates when this went through.
Yeah, we did.
None of us, I don't think there's anybody on this board sitting up here who voted for this, but this contract is a contract, and we should try to honor those things. So I would think that, I'd probably lean towards number 4. Take it out of our hide.
Supervisor Mills?
I'm still at option 1 and possibly looking at some of the additional information that might be able to be presented from staff.
Supervisor Clapp?
Well, it's going to be one of the two. I mean, either we're going to do what they recommend, or we're going to have to see how much we can pay out of our part. I still want to split it sort of with the consumer and with us, because I still like to keep some of the funds there, because they have a lot of programs for taking school kids down for the recycle class. I think this is an educational problem that we have. We have to start learning how to recycle in a better way. So I'd hate to take all that money out where we have nothing to promote, a recycling program. So I'm sort of like 50-50. I like to go a little both ways.
Okay, and it doesn't, here's what I propose. I would like, I guess, to go with number 1 and have staff at least have number 4 somewhat prepared for us to consider also when it comes back on 26.
Yeah, certainly we can bring it back as, crafted in a way that gives with more numbers so that we can see what those impacts would be on the franchise fee side of it, but then also allow the board to make a decision on which of those 2 options.
We agree?
Same here.
Okay, so there's direction. We have a concurrence on that. Okay? And this was informational items, so that ends. Thank you. Do you need a couple minutes to, you're good? It's all good? All right, Madam Clerk, we'll go on to item number, or the announcements, excuse me, supervisor announcements.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there has been expense reimbursement, mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also, at the board member's discretion, include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
Mr. Moss, can you? Thank you. Supervisor Clapp.
I have nothing to report out on, but I'd like to make a statement. My name keeps coming up quite a bit on subjects that it shouldn't be on, when we're talking about things, and it's talking about a bankruptcy I was supposed to do to relieve $80,000. First, it wasn't $80,000, it was $90,000. I did not file a bankrupt to relieve it. I litigated in court for due process of my 14th Amendment, and the court ruled in my favor and relieved me of the $90,000 debt in order the county issue the permits. So I'm tired of the same lie being said over and over where it becomes the truth. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
Nothing to report at this time under AB 1234.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Nothing to report at this time under AB 1234.
And I have nothing to report at this time either. Staff? No? Okay.
Public comment?
We had public comment earlier and we didn't go through the 30 minutes, so
Yeah.
we're done. Stand adjourned.